Good afternoon, intuitives. Been a little longer than I intended. Things happen, life, drama, can't avoid it, unfortunately. So, topic I want to talk about today is why INFJs quote want to believe, and by want to believe, I mean that in many ways, but mainly how INFJs in particular are drawn to mysteries such as cryptids or extraterrestrials or the occult and things of mysterious natures that, cannot be proven but cannot be 100% disproven, and how we tend to lean towards wanting to believe in the improbable. And this is true in other aspects too. INFJs are notorious. There's the saying I've read in a lot of articles that, INFJs say the impossible just takes a little longer, and we tend to strive towards, completing the improbable tasks. We'll go for a job that we seem unlikely to get. We'll, convince ourselves that with the right planning, the right moves, we can get a shot with a girl that's out of our league. It's just things we're known for doing. We're not settlers. We're not, big on the status quo. It comes from our nature as idealists and why we're drawn to those things. And, particularly in my own experience since early childhood, one of these great I want to believe things for me, aside from the obvious, if you've been listening to my videos, which is witchcraft, but the mystery of Plato's Atlantis has always fascinated me. The idea that this idyllic utopian society, that stretched back roughly 10,000 years prior to like the classical era in Hellenistic Greece, is just fascinating to me. That, a civilization that had technology on par with the height of the Roman Empire back when we were still essentially hunter-gatherers, and the evidence over the years that somewhat supports it. I mean, like, Göbekli Tepe is certainly an advanced city that wasn't supposed to exist at the time that it was, and reading certain accounts, about the possibilities of this lost civilization, particularly people like the late John Anthony West, who was an independent Egyptologist, and his friend and colleague, Dr. Schock, a geologist who his main goal was to prove that the erosion on the Great Sphinx on the Giza Plateau is via water, thus making the Sphinx a lot older than previously thought. And then the biggest one in the lost civilization, no doubt, would be Graham Hancock. I mean, Fingerprints of the Gods. If you're into like history, mysteries, and the idea of a lost civilization, the definitive work would be Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock, which was released sometime in the mid-90s, and it's on Audible. It's a good book, and Hancock, whatever you think of him, he's a good narrator. So those mysteries have always, just the idea that something like that could be, just gives an INFJ like myself hope that maybe what seems to be probable isn't true, and perhaps the idea that these things could be true would thus give more credence to my own idyllic nature and what I wish to be true in my own life, if that makes any sense. But you're probably INFJs if you're watching that, so you probably understand. So, things like that, always been drawn to it. Even in fiction too, I've mentioned before, my favorite INFJ fictional character of all time is Fox Mulder from the X-Files. I had, related to him growing up. I was actually told by a friend to start watching the X-Files in the mid-90s because he often compared me to Mulder via our sense of humor, and his utter obsession with extraterrestrials, according to my friend, mirrored mine with witchcraft. So it was nice as a, young INFJ middle school kid who didn't know anybody else like him to at least have a fictional character that exhibits a lot of the same eccentricities as I did, and same sense of humor, things like that. So that was cool. And, it just put me further down the rabbit hole of the unknown. Lately, because INFJs, as idealists, we want to believe people too. We're also inclined to believe in things like cryptids. Like lately in my downtime, or while I'm trying to exercise or something, I'll throw on the YouTube channel Dogman Encounters and listen to some of the accounts. I mean, some of them seem extremely far-fetched, but others make you wonder. And the same goes with Bigfoot. Like the idea that these creatures could exist undetected for the amount of time, and there's some precedence for that in actual zoology. They just, I think last year or 2 years ago, found a new species of wild dog somewhere in the Himalayas. That's a fairly big animal. But, aside from cryptids, we want to believe things are true, and in a lot of cases that extends into hoping that things in the past aren't true. Like with our empathetic nature, the idea of extinction is pretty sad to us. And I'll give another personal example. So I've always liked penguins since I was little, and if I think everybody at some point through elementary school looked through the infamous Birds of America book by John J. Audubon. So in there's apparently we had a penguin-like bird here in the northern hemisphere called the great auk. It was on both sides of the Atlantic, and it was supposedly hunted to extinction in 1852. Was believed to be the last confirmed sighting. It's a really sad story what happened to the great auk, and it seems like an awesome bird. So the idea that that may still be out there is very intriguing to me, especially with Forrest Galante having done an episode searching for it, and there being a few articles over the years where eggshell fragments have been found that would be too large to be from any other native species in the North Atlantic but the great auk. Now, this is a little convoluted example, but basically, as an INFJ, my idyllic nature wants me to believe that, like, somewhere in the North Atlantic, there's some small little rock of an island, and on that island lives the last colony of the great auks. The great auk's cool. Penguins are cool. It's not a penguin. It's a great example of convergent evolution, but it's just cool, and I want it to still be out there. All right, that was a little sillier than I wanted it to be, but again, our idyllic nature makes us want to believe. If we put something in our mind that we want to be true, that is technically possible, we want to do everything in our power to make that true, regardless of how improbable it is. Like, we don't care, that it's like the infamous, oh, it's 1 in a million shot. If it's something we got our mind set to, whether it's a job or perhaps trying to court a specific person, we're going to do it. Because once we get focused on something, if we deem it as important to us, we're going to do everything in our power to achieve that idyllic outcome. And you see a lot of that with certain mysteries. Like, INFJs want to believe, and we want to know the truth, and we'll go into areas or explore areas that make us uncomfortable if we can try to prove that true. Like a couple years ago, as I said, I grew up in the suburbs of Philly. If anybody's watched ghost shows, one of the most infamous spots is the Penhurst Asylum, which is not far from where I grew up at all. And I was, in an argument with a group of friends about the existence of ghosts. Needless to say, guess where we went in the middle of the night? And, a little scary. I mean, those of us that have permits to legally carry handguns did, for the sake of running into, say, meth addicts or, actual people that may show us violence. But, I wanted to prove my argument enough that I took people there, even though it terrifies me, because the idea of ghosts is terrifying to me, because you can't, you know what I mean? If you encounter a ghost, what do you do? Like, you're out in the woods and you encounter a mysterious animal that isn't supposed to exist. It's still flesh and blood. My revolver could potentially put it down. I have some way to defend myself. But in the case of something like a ghost, yeah, not so much. That's why it scares me. But even as a witch. So, but the point of me telling that story is that, I wanted to believe so much that I knew the only way I could potentially get this friend to believe me would be to take him to a place like that and potentially have him experience something he couldn't explain. It would make him scratch his head. So that's kind of how INFJs are with wanting to believe and the lengths we will go to try to prove our beliefs and prove us being right. These are just a few examples. Again, I kind of rambled in this video, but I just wanted to kind of do a video off the top of my head getting at why INFJs are drawn to things like the paranormal, why it interests us, and not necessarily to say that we believe in everything in the cryptid world or the occult or paranormal or anything like that. But I'm saying there's certain topics where our minds will say that could be possible, and if we believe it's possible, we'd like it to be proven true. Some stuff in these fields I've read, and it's like, yeah, ain't no way. But ones where it's like, just maybe that 1 in a million chance. We want that 1 in a million chance to be true. It's similar, like I said, if you're asking a girl out that's way out of your league, you're gonna overthink it forever as an INFJ, and then you're going to, essentially act like you've deciphered this bomb, and you can make like do say just the right things at just the right time, and it'll work out in this 1 in a million chance, but who knows? I was not successful when I tried that once back in college, and I don't know if I'd ever try it again. But it's just an example that most people can relate to. So, as INFJs, we want to believe. We want to believe in what could be, and we're not easily convinced that what we believe could be isn't true simply because the majority of people don't believe it true. So, as always, with anything, INFJs, trust your intuition, never sell out your integrity, and the truth is out there.